Today on the Badaboom Podcast, we're joined by Amir from PanelFly.io, a new platform changing the game for indie comic distribution. We dive into how PanelFly is helping creators reach retailers directly and why that shift matters now more than ever in the wake of Diamond's bankruptcy. Plus, we talk about how DC's Absolute line is breathing new life into classic characters and how that same spirit of originality and risk is what keeps indie comics alive and thriving. Listen in and bada boom. Hey, Amir, how's it going?
Not bad. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I know you've had a busy morning. You had a press release with PanelFly that dropped recently, and I'm sure your inbox has been blown up with people trying to get in on PanelFly and promote their own books through it, connect with retailers. Which I mean, that kind of is what PanelFly is about. So why don't you kind of tell us more in your own words what PanelFly is, how it's going to help not only retailers but indie comic book publishers?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm the CEO of PanelFly. So PanelFly is connecting publishers to retailers directly, specifically focusing on comic publishers and comic brands. If you have figures, things like that, you can also get on the platform. We're connecting you to with comic shops. We want to do other retailers as we grow, and other publishers, things like that. But we're now specifically focused on that. And so essentially, we're kind of just playing in this modern era where publishers have their own e-commerce presence. They have their own website. They're doing direct to consumer or they're doing a Kickstarter. So they're either fulfilling their own product. They have a printing press. It's like printing on demand and shipping product, or maybe they have a 3PL, things of that nature. And so they kind of control their shipping process. And we're saying, hey, like, why not take advantage of that? Why not get them on a platform that connects them to retailers? They can control their shipping process, control their quality. They can control their price, which is a wholesale price. We are a wholesale platform. They can control their minimums. They can control if they want shipping price for shipping or anything like that. And essentially, we're giving retailers a way to aggregate all these publishers. And again, anything from small press to big press. We're in talks with a bunch of bigger publishers currently. And then we have a bunch of smaller publishers on the platform. And like you said, my inbox is flooded with that publisher's weekly press release, which is great. That's awesome. And so trying to get to all that as much as I can. I got a bunch of retailers, publishers, and people who want to do podcasts and things like that. So we got a lot planned. Happy to dive into more, but that's kind of Panelfly in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got you on early because it sounds like it's going to be a press gambit for you coming up in the pretty much next month or two, hopefully. Which I've got to say, I mean, I don't think there's a indie comic book writer or publisher that doesn't want to talk to you and get to know more about Panelfly and the company you started, because to have access to stores is what I think so many people really want. They start a Kickstarter and they get the funding from there. But now I can see people saying, "Hey, the internet's it's a big place. Lots of stuff happens on the internet. It's easy to get washed out in the noise." But to have the opportunity to say, "Oh, I could be on a bookshelf in a store and discovered by a new audience that maybe was
Mm.
exclusively just on Kickstarter before," is a really big opportunity and a really good prospect for indie publishers to look forward to.
Yeah, no, 100%, especially for, you know, all the way from self-publishers to small press. Like if you just, you're an artist, you're a writer, and you have a book and maybe you just made your book and now, you don't know what to do. You made a great product. You're not necessarily business savvy. um, then you can get on a platform like Panelfly, and as long as you have some inventory, start selling your product to retailers. And let's say maybe you made it past that point, you're selling to a few retailers, you have a website, you're selling online, or maybe you did a Kickstarter. That's great. You're doing some sales, but you can use Panelfly to scale your business and actually make it a true business. And then for bigger publishers, a lot of the times they don't have all their products in distribution. And so now they have a way to put those products in distribution, or maybe they have like a digital copy of their of some of their products, and they're thinking of it's selling well, and they're thinking about making it a physical product, and now you could put that on Panelfly. And as well as we know, if they're printing bigger publishers are printing a lot of inventory for their products to get a better price. They might have a lot of inventory, a lot of back issues. And so for bigger publishers, you can also put that on the platform as well. So yeah, I think there's a number of ways we help out publishers. And then again, giving retailers access to that. And we don't charge retailers to be on the platform. We don't charge publishers to be on the platform. We simply take a 5% transaction fee of the order. And again, we're able to do that because we don't have a warehouse. We're not shipping your product. We're not storing the product, ordering boxes and things like that. We're simply just connecting y'all and letting y'all handle y'all's own process between the retailer and the publisher. And it's specifically good for the retailer because we're consolidating all that for them, especially when it comes to indie publishers. Like if you're a small press guy, or you're the guy who just made a comic book and now you're selling to a few retailers, you know, there's any given number of other publishers that are doing the same thing for that same retailer. And it's like, hey, well, for the retailer, we're consolidating that process for them. You're working with 20 different local brands and local publishers, and they're not in distribution. You're going to have to manage all those email threads, all those calls, and then they're going to show up in the store, and you're going to be like, hey, did I order that product? Do I have inventory? And then you'll take it on, you'll cut them a check. And so for the retailers, we're just consolidating that process and then giving them a catalog of products they don't have access to, or also just kind of replacing that gap in the industry, especially with Diamond gone. So yeah, exactly. Those are some of the things we're doing over here.
Yeah, and it seems like a really big win-win for both, publishers and retailers, because on the publisher side, you could use this as kind of an opportunity to pitch your product to retailers, and then retailers also have access to a much larger catalog of books they maybe never even knew existed, or people they didn't know who they were before, or people they haven't heard of. And so if a book, does really well, and they're like, oh, well, does someone else have more books out there that maybe they just didn't do with this publishing company under this brand? They can just look it up inside your guys's catalog inside Panelfly and say, oh, Jordan Thomas actually has like 4 or 5 other books out. Let me order the trade for this, and I can have it in my store because I know people are fans for that. It can allow retailers to connect deeper, I think, with their community in the store that they are in.
Yeah, 100%. I think, one of the hypotheses, I guess, if you will, we have here at Panelfly is that, hey, maybe 10% of the retailer's inventory is indie stuff for local brands, local publishers. And we all know, they're creating the best content, they're creating the best stories, they're creating the best product, they have the best quality. But a lot of times these retailers, they just don't have access to all these small press, and or they just don't necessarily want to work with them, not because they don't want to, but it's because it's cumbersome, because again, it goes to the point where now I have to manage, 3 to 5 catalogs with all these distributors, and then I have to work with 100 different publishers and brands, and it's like that's cumbersome for them. And so yeah, it's a platform for them to get on. And now we're saying, hey, now maybe 30% of the retailer's inventory is going to be local guys or small press or indie press, right? And so that's kind of the hypothesis we have here at Panelfly, as well as, again, to that point of, you just made your comic book, you're an artist, you're a writer, you have a great product. Um, but again, you're not the most social, maybe you don't know, you're not business savvy, things like that. Well, now you have the potential to become the next, Mark Spears, because of a platform like Panelfly.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely has a good opportunity for people to reach an audience that they've been wanting to reach for a long time, probably. And I know for you, like, you're definitely very passionate about Panelfly and how you want to help creators and retailers get their stories out there. Has PanelFly been something that you've always wanted to do, or something that's been kind of recent for you?
Yeah, honestly, more recent. It's funny. So I've been an entrepreneur before. I had like a food and beverage business, and I had to deal with distributors and retailers, and it was a pain. It was complex. It was primitive. They took a huge margin out of a low margin product. That's something that's pretty similar to food and beverage to the comic industries. They're both low margin products. They both have to deal with like primitive distribution models, and so that's a huge issue I found when having my product. We were distributed in retailers like 7-Eleven, Gold's Gym, Vitamin Shop, GNC, things like that. And it was just a pain. And you had to do buybacks. There was certain clauses in every contract. And it was just like, man, how do you make money in this business? And then I exited that, and for the past few years, I've either been in tech sales or just investing on the side or things like that. And then recently, I was like, I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug, and had to do something again. So I was like, what can I tie into like a big problem there is, and then my passion. And one of my other passions is obviously comics, anime, things like that. Love it. And I was like, well, a huge problem for me was distribution in my last business. And then literally as I was thinking about this idea, um, I Diamond went bankrupt. And I mean, the industry did a 180. They just completely flipped and turned around, and I was like, okay, it's time. Like, let's do this. As well as I was actually, I've been working on a graphic novel. And when I was looking for publishers and looking for things like that, it's not ready yet by any means. I got an editor who edited my script, and I just hired an artist. But yeah, so those things kind of meshed together, and then Diamond went bankrupt, and I was like, okay, this is a great idea. Okay, timing is perfect. You know what? Let's do this. And I mean, literally, we've done a soft launch at the beginning of April, and I mean, honestly, I'm shocked of like how much traction we have so far, especially for a soft launch, and we're still in April. So I'm just amazed, and I want to keep it going, and just want to help the industry out, and I think we have something here because when when Diamond went bankrupt, everyone's like, "Oh, what's going to happen? What's going on? What's going to happen with distribution? What's going to happen with small press? Like this and that." And it's like, well, now here's the answer. Out of all that, here comes PanelFly. Um, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
been yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I had.
Yeah, no, and I think like this is a really good opportunity that like anytime there's like a crisis, there's always an opportunity to turn it around. And I think PanelFly is that opportunity for a lot of people because during the bankruptcy process for Diamond, I know a lot of stores had their books delayed, and people that are just trying to get books in general started to turn more towards indie comics to just have something to read or to do more of and be more engaged in the comic book industry because their regular books just were delayed by weeks or sometimes months, and some people turned to indie comics and got more into that. And I think this is a good opportunity for people to say, and for retailers to say, is I want to grab whatever I can out of indie comics because my store is now really into them. People didn't get to pick up anything that was from Diamond, and they've discovered that they are the audience for indie comics now. So I think
Yeah,
you've got a really good opportunity with Panelfly to push the envelope further with what indie comics is for retailers and for readers as well.
no, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's funny too. Like, I started reading indie comics in COVID, so I was one of the COVID guys who started picking them up. And I mean, honestly, I was just like, these are better stories. They're better products. And now when I go to my LCS, I literally only get indie stuff. Like sometimes I'll get Marvel and DC, but I'll get it literally for the cover, get the first print run, and maybe it'll be worth something someday. I, barely read the Marvel and DC stuff. I literally just get it for speculation, for the covers. Granted, there's some cases where I will like obviously, the new Batman. Obviously, like that's great. God, I'm blanking on it. What's the new series with the Wonder Woman, Batman, and I'm blanking on the new series of what it's called. But anyways, so obviously that's actually great content and then great products. They need to start doing more stuff like that. But
The
yeah, like
absolute
I'll
stuff.
yeah, absolute stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
why I bumped that. I was like, wow. But yeah, so that the absolute stuff, like that's great. I actually love it. And, some people hate it and complain about it, but I actually love it. I'm really loving the new Mr. Freeze. Even the new Bane, like I don't really have an issue with that personally. I mean, it could go either way. But anyways, yeah, the absolute stuff's great. But I mean, I go straight to Image. I go straight to Dark Horse. I go straight to Titan. I go straight to all the smaller press and look at what they have coming out. Like Dynamite, Skybound.
Boom.
I love that stuff. That's sorry.
Oh, Boom. Boom also's got a lot of good stuff coming out too.
Oh yeah, Boom with Berserker. I've been trying to pick up all that. I heard they were gonna actually, I think, make a movie on that, so that's gonna be pretty cool. And then I know like Vault just did that like Post Malone thing. I heard they're gonna make some movie off that. That looks pretty cool. So yeah, indie stuff, I mean, honestly, is just the better stuff. And like you see, these actors going to the indie publishers over a Marvel and a DC to make new characters and things like that. And you got to wonder why, So I think, yeah, there's just this shift that's happening between indie and, the big two. And we're just trying to play on that and, expand that even more, really.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head of why people like the absolute universe in DC so much is they can take all the risks because it's new. They know it's going to get rewritten. It's not anything that they have to be like, well, what's going to happen next after this character, goes on to the next writer. It's like, no, it's just with this writer, and then it's kind of probably just going to end with that writer. Like they'll probably have the final say and everything, and they get the ability to make something new and not really care about what's going to happen afterwards. And I think that's what makes indie comics really special too is this may be only a 6-issue book, but you can take really big risks and have really big character development or actions taken because it's going to end and you've got to wrap it up some way without worrying about someone else coming over and carrying the torch. So I think a lot of people have discovered that through the absolute universe and through COVID. And like I said before, like I think PanelFly has just got set up to really hit a home run to get more of those good quality stories that people want and not something that feels safe from a comic book perspective of like, well, did that even matter? Someone else is going to come and write this and just change it. It's like, no, these will be lasting stories that people want to have their hands on and collect and read. So I think PanelFly is in a really good spot in the industry where it is right now. Is there anything else coming out for PanelFly in the future? Like I know you had to do at the soft launch in April. Are there any updates that are on the way for PanelFly, and where can people stay up to date with what's going on with PanelFly?
Yeah, so we're doing our hard launch in May. We have like a list of retailers we're going to onboard when we do that, and then I'm going to be doing more outreach to retailers. If you're a publisher, if you're a retailer and watching this, sign up, or you can email me at amir@panelfly.io. And it's funny, it's something I was talking with you about. We need to get better with socials. We need to get better with YouTube and maybe have like a PanelFly podcast. So look out for those things soon to come. Can't give a hard date on any of that stuff yet. And that's where you can keep up with us. But for now, just go to the website. You can email me. You can call me. So that's the best way to keep up with us for now. And then soon enough, we will start doing socials and things like that. We'll have a newsletter, and we have a ton more features coming too. We're working with, like I said, a couple bigger publishers, and we're making some features that they need to be on the platform. Makes sense for the business because they're a bit bigger. So we're working on some things like that. We'll announce those as they come out. But yeah, for now, just stay tuned. Go to the website again. Email me. Got some big things planned.
Awesome. Well, Amir, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy, but we appreciate you coming on, telling us about PanelFly, telling our audience. I know we've got some comic book writers that listen to our podcast regularly, and I hope they sign up for PanelFly as soon as they hear this, and get their books in more readers' hands.
Absolutely.
And with that, oh yeah, totally. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom Podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.